Hello and welcome to Math Matters. I'm Ms. Granados, and today we're going to continue learning about finding the mean in a set of data. By the end of today's lesson, you should be able to determine the mean of a group of numbers representing data from a given context as a measure of center. You will need some paper, something to write with, and a calculator. You can use a handheld calculator or one on the computer or even on a cell phone. Any simple calculator will do. Go ahead and gather your materials and come right back. Take a look at this table. What do you notice? And what questions might you be wondering? I noticed a few things. I noticed Kim read every day except Sunday. I also noticed she didn't read as much on Tuesday and Thursday as she did on the other days. I noticed that Kim read the same number of pages on Monday as she did on Wednesday. I remember that when we look at a set of data, if there's one data value that's repeated more times than the other data values, we can call that data value the mode. So in this case, the mode of this data is 26. I also noticed that Kim read the most number of pages on Saturday and the least number of pages on Tuesday. And I remember from last week's lessons that the range of the data is the difference between the greatest and the least data values. So in this case, the range would be 42, which is what she read on Saturday, minus 15, what she read on Tuesday. And that's the same as 27. So the range is 27. I wonder if Kim had a lot of work to do on Tuesday and Thursday, and maybe that's why she didn't read that much on those 2 days. I wonder if she's almost done with the book. I wonder if she'll read the same number of pages next week. I also wonder what the average number of pages Kim read last week. Let's look at this last wondering. What is the average number of pages Kim read last week? Well, there are different types of averages or measures of center. One type of average is mode, which we learned about last week. The mode is the piece of data that occurs most frequently in the data set. We already established that the mode of this data set is 26 because Kim read 26 pages on 2 different days. The median is the middle value of a data set organized in order from least to greatest or from greatest to least. We will learn more on median in a future lesson later this week. The last type of average is the mean, which represents a fair share concept of the data. All the data values can be totaled and then divided by the number of data values in the set. We'll be focusing on this type of average in today's lesson. In yesterday's lesson, we used small items like square tiles, beans, etc. to represent our data. For example, in this case, when we talked about the average price of toys you wanted to buy, we used those items to represent the dollar amount each toy cost. Then we redistributed the items to give a fair share to each toy. The end result was 5 items, or $5 for each toy. Well, let's look at another way we could have done it without using small items, but rather by using a calculator. Let's look at the original prices of each toy again. We see there are 6 toys that cost different amounts of money. To figure out the mean, we can add up all the values and divide by the number of values in the set. In this case, we would add up 3 plus 6 plus 4 plus 9 plus 3 plus 5 and get a total of $30. Since there are 6 values in this data set, we would divide $30 by 6, which gives us $5 as the mean, or the average. So if we go back to our first example and we want to find the mean, or the average of this data set, we would need to add all the data values and then divide by 6, which is the number of data values in this set. Go ahead and use your calculator to figure out the mean of this set. So let's see if we figured out the mean in the same way. To find the mean of this data set, we need to add the number of pages Kim read every day. And that total number of pages is 156. Then we divide that sum by the number of data values, which is 6, and that gives us 26. So the mean, or the average, for this data set is 26. In this example, we see that the mean is the same as a couple of the data values, Monday and Wednesday, but the rest of the values are either above or below the mean. That makes sense since mean is also fair share. Some are below and some are above, and the mean redistributes it so that they're all the same value. In this case, the mean and the mode are actually the same, 26. Let's look at another scenario. Teachers and students often find the mean of test scores. In this example, Julian has the results of his 4 science tests. Figure out the mean of his test scores. Did you get 364 as the sum of all the test scores? And then divide 364 by 4 to get 91 as the mean, or his average test score? If so, great job! We figured out the mean was 91, even though each of Julian's tests were either above or below the mean. That's what we're learning about the average, right? Mean is a fair share of the data, or a redistribution of the values. Now we're going to look at another example. The chart below shows the number of sit-ups and push-ups that 4 athletes completed. The first column lists the students' names. The next column are the number of sit-ups each student did, and the last column lists the number of push-ups each athlete completed. What is the mean number of push-ups completed by these 4 athletes? Go ahead and figure out the mean for this data set. Remember to look at the data related to the question. In this case, the number of push-ups. Hopefully, you only looked at the data in the push-ups column, since the question asked about the mean number of push-ups completed. The table was giving you extra information with the list of sit-ups. Sometimes you don't need all the data offered to answer the question, so just make sure you're reading the questions and the data carefully. Okay, so now that we know what data we're looking at, hopefully you added these 4 values up and then divided that sum by 4. Did you get that 41 was the mean number of push-ups completed? If so, you were correct. Now look at the same chart again. What is the difference between the mean number of sit-ups and the mean number of push-ups that these 4 athletes completed? We already figured out the mean number of push-ups. You need to figure out the mean number of sit-ups and then find the difference between the 2 mean values. What do they mean by difference? Difference is the result of subtracting one number from the other. So take a minute to figure out the mean number of sit-ups and then the difference between the 2 means. Okay, so looking at the data for sit-ups, hopefully you added these 4 values up and then divided that sum by 4. And did you get 49 as the mean number of sit-ups completed? If so, that's correct. Then to find the difference in both mean values, you would need to subtract both numbers and you would get a difference of 8. So the difference in mean values is 8. So what does that tell us about these 4 athletes? Overall, the average number or the mean of sit-ups was higher than the mean or the average number of push-ups. Does that mean that every athlete did better with their sit-ups than with their push-ups? Not everybody. We can see that Rosa had a higher number of push-ups than sit-ups. The other three athletes had a higher number of sit-ups than push-ups. Some only slightly, like Oliver, and others significantly more, like Kevin. The number of sit-ups Kevin did was more than double the number of push-ups he did. So the mean tells us the average number in a data set, even though each data value may be above, below, or the same as the mean. So let's review. Today we figured out the mean or the average of the number of pages Kim read last week, Julian's test scores, and the number of sit-ups and push-ups 4 athletes completed. Each time, we added all of the data values and divided that sum by the number of data values in the set. We used our calculator to help us calculate the mean. Also, in looking at the data and comparing it to the mean, we noticed that even though the mean tells us the average number in a data set, each data value may be above, below, or exactly equal to the mean. Here is today's learning target. How do you feel about your ability to determine the mean of a group of numbers? Share with someone next to you or write down your thoughts. You can also write down any notes from today that you might want to remember later on, or any questions you still have so that you can ask your teacher. This week, we will continue learning about finding the mean or average of data, so make sure to come back tomorrow. For Math Matters, I'm Ms. Granados. Have a mathematical day and keep on counting.